This presentation describes a micro-armour storage solution using document storage boxes. This system can be used for any solid cardboard box, such as can be purchased for gifts, and allows players to store their micro-armour, or any figures, safely. With internal padding, this allows players to pack their figures into luggage if they are undertaking air or rail travel. This shows a standard auto document storage box, which can be found in most news agencies or stationery stores, or ordered from the internet. In this case I am using different colored boxes to represent specific nationalities, periods or figures being stored. Document storage boxes will also include labels, which you can see at the end of this document storage box. In this case the document storage box is storing GHQ 1 to 285 scale aircraft figures. Within the document storage box are 2 trays, each of which can store a number of aircraft on irregular foam. For transport, a foam layer is placed on top of the tray, and cotton wool can be placed within the tray to eliminate any movement. Each tray consists of 4 compartments. The compartments are created to reduce the movement of the figures if being transported. While it's possible to have each tray consist of a single compartment, this is not recommended. Each tray is lined with felt. This is to reduce movement as the figures will often stick to the felt. Because aircraft are being stored, which are not mounted on bases, extra effort has to be made to reduce movement. The aircraft are on pieces of irregular foam. This makes it almost impossible for the aircraft to move horizontally, which means there is minimal movement if the box is placed on its side. If the box is upside down, then movement is possible, thus a thin layer of packing foam is placed on top of each tray. This is normally 2 to 3 mm thick and can be cut to fit the top of the tray. The figures will have a tendency to stick to this. Finally, cotton wool can be placed in the tray if required. The next document storage box is designed to store infantry. While infantry figures could be stored with vehicles, their low height and difficulty in picking them up means it's better to create a unique storage solution, if the total number of elements to store is large enough. Here we can see a tray with 4 compartments which can store infantry elements 2 wide. The tray is very thin, allowing for 3 trays to occupy a single document storage box. The top tray is ultra thin and the other 2 thicker. This allows you to maximize your storage. In this case, this document storage box can store 48 elements in a tray, with up to 144 elements in the entire document storage box. This is sufficient for 2 force mixes for a typical game, with room to spare. This shows the second, slightly deeper tray. The deeper tray allows you to store smaller vehicles. In this case the tray consists of 2 compartments. Players can retain the 4 compartments if they wish, but infantry elements are normally difficult to pick up. As a result, space needs to exist around the element in order for players to pick it up by the base. The larger compartments assist with this. However, if any travel is required, the trays must be covered by a thin layer of packing foam. I prefer 4 compartments because it reduces movement and allows for more packing options. An example is infantry, engineers, machine guns, mortars and headquarters elements. All can occupy their own compartment. This shows all 3 trays exposed. You will notice one benefit of the 3-tray solution is the number of figures you can store. Each of these trays can store an extra 6 elements. In this case our document storage box can store 156 elements. While not displayed here, if players wish to store vehicles, a maximum of 2 trays is recommended. This allows you to store most, if not all, types of 6 mm figures. Unlike this example, a tray to store vehicles should be divided up into compartments which are the width of an element. If correctly designed, the elements will fit into the tray and be unable to move. In my instructions for how to construct a storage box we cover this in more detail. In this example we are using a larger document storage box. This is for the player with a huge number of figures. From experience, this type of box stores far more figures than you would ever need for a game. Its purpose is for storage at home. Players would then pick out the elements they wish to use in a game and place it into a smaller storage box for transport. As a result, the focus is not on reducing movement and larger compartments can be considered. In this case, I designed it for transport, so it is over-engineered. This shows the first tray. As you can see, most of the compartments are only wide enough for a single element. In most cases, the elements fit snugly into the compartment, with the base touching the felt on either side. This reduces any movement to almost zero. However, getting this right is difficult, and in this example I have failed to achieve this. There are 10 compartments, with the last one being unusually wide. This is simply due to the length of the box and was not a design feature. This allows you to store 90 elements in a single tray, which is sufficient for both forces in a typical game. This shows the second tray. I wish to note that it's important to have separate compartments with dividers within each tray, simply to allow players to pick up a tray from within the document box. If this consisted of a single compartment, removing the second tray to reveal the third tray would be very difficult. The weight of the figures in each tray is not trivial. As a result, the dividers at each end of the tray are at full height to allow players to pick the tray up. The other dividers are all lower. This is to allow players to more easily pick up the figures within the tray. While this may seem trivial, it's actually very important for ergonomic reasons. All 3 trays are now exposed. This box allows for the storage of 270 elements, with a mix of 3 cm and 4 cm depths. This is not something you would transport to a clubhouse for a friendly game, and in my case it's the result of a serious figure buying addiction which I am still trying to deal with. With this many figures, storage is an important consideration. One reason why I used document boxes is to allow for storage within my house. My older storage solution used wooden boxes, which my wife would not allow me to take into the house. This allows me to deceive her, and she is now more devoted to me as she thinks these boxes are all related to my work. A mighty win for a gamer addict. We will now cover how to build a storage box for your micro-armour. The starting point is the storage box. I use 2 different sizes of document storage boxes. One allows me to place 3 trays in it and the other 2. This size is the most common sized document box, and I will use this as my example. You need to carefully measure the internal dimensions. It's important the trays fit correctly within the document storage box, and I will provide some example measuring guides in the following slides. This shows the template for this size of box. The first step is to determine the size of the base of the tray. In this case it's 31 cm by 22.2 cm. This must easily fit within this document storage box, but not allow for too much movement. In my case the tray is about 7 mm smaller. The baseboard can be made from 3 mm MDF sheet and is cut with a jigsaw with a fine blade. The cuts do not need to be perfectly even, as the box sides can cover any imperfection. Once you have cut it, make sure it fits correctly in the document storage box. Smooth off the board's edges with a rasp or file. We now need to cut the tray sides. In this case we will be deploying 2 trays, each of which will be 3.5 cm high. This height includes the base and the felt on top of the tray's sides. The sides are made up from pine wood, which can be purchased in a hardware store. The pine pieces are 3 cm high by 1.2 cm wide. The width is important because it must be wide enough to allow for the slots for the dividers. You can use thinner wood, but to cut these slots becomes harder. This solution allows for a wide margin of error when cutting the slots, which for a lazy craftsman like myself is important. Each tray consists of 2 31 cm long and 2 19.8 cm long pieces of pine. I normally use a small saw with fine teeth to cut these and will often cut 4 pieces at once to ensure uniform length. The most important length is the 2 shorter pieces. they must be the same length. Ensure you smooth off the ends and ensure the pieces all fit together. I normally place the entire arrangement in the document storage box to ensure it all fits. The hardest job is cutting the slots for the dividers. You will notice each compartment is 3.6 centimeters wide. Because felt can be up to 3 millimeters thick, this is the minimum size. Any smaller and your elements will not fit, and any larger the elements will move around. The end compartment is unusually wide because of the length of the tray. Cutting the slots requires some effort and skill. I use a hand saw with fine teeth. I also use a cutting block and ensure the wood is secured in it. I make a single cut across the two pieces of wood, move the wood 3 millimeters down in the cutting block and cut again. The slots need to be 3 millimeters or more in width, so some hand saw movement in the center is required to create the desired width. The depth should be 3 millimeters to 6 millimeters, and some care is required to ensure you do not cut right through it. To ensure both pieces are identical, I normally tape both pieces of wood together, which ensure they do not move in relation to each other. With the dimensions I have arrived at, there is a good margin of error to work with. We now need to cut the dividers. These are made up of the same material as the base, which is 3 mm thick MDF. Ensure the length is at least 4 mm wider than the tray, so each end fits snugly into the slot. The dividers at each end should be the same height as the tray side, or slightly less. This is to allow for enough room for fingers to grab it. The central dividers should be about 1 centimeter high. This is to allow for enough room to pick up figures from the sides. Players can choose to make these central dividers higher if they prefer. The next step is to assemble your tray. I use PVA wood glue designed for outside use, which can be purchased from a hardware shop. This is thicker and hardens quicker while providing good adhesion while wet. This allows you to run glue along the edge of the base and place the side piece on it. When you press it sticks very well. Do this for all sides and ensure all the sides are aligned correctly. I then place a heavy weight on top of the whole arrangement, after which I ensure everything is aligned correctly. My trick is to use large books, which have been covered by clear plastic contact. The clear plastic cover will not stick to the PVA glue at all. I place a book on a bookshelf and place the tray on it. I then cover this with another book. I then follow with another tray and another book. Finally, I place a number of heavy books on top of this. By placing it on a bookshelf, it is high enough for me to ensure everything is aligned and the side pieces are firmly together. After 24 hours I place the dividers in the slots and glue them down as well. I now glue the felt on the tray. In this case I use craft PVA glue, as I do not want it to dry quickly and I want some movement to ensure the felt is correctly placed. This consists of two steps. The first is the main piece of felt which runs along the box and across the dividers. Ensure the glue covers all sides of the inside of the box. Too much glue is acceptable, but missing a piece will cause problems. Use thick cardboard to ensure the felt goes into the corners. This is important, and the felt must tightly be rammed into the corners of the compartments. If this does not occur, the elements will not fit correctly. To make your tray look nice, cut pieces to fit along each side, glue and wrap over the top. This shows the tray before the edges have been trimmed. Leave the tray for 48 hours to fully dry and then place elements in it. To make a full box takes me a day to cut all the wood for the trays and then to glue the tray sides. On the second day I glue the dividers, and on the third day I glue the main felt in the tray. On the fourth day I glue the felt sides, and on the fifth I trim the trays. On the sixth day I can place elements in the tray. The main delay is waiting for the glue to dry, and it's very important the glue is dry before you go to the next stage. Do not rush this, as making a mistake could make the tray useless, as has occurred with me a few times already. This box is suitable for any typical force a player would wish to deploy in a game. Aircraft and infantry can be placed in the same box. A quick comment about the color. When purchasing the felt I found pink was commonly available and low in price. While this is not the color I wanted, I found it worked very well. An early tray used dark green felt and I found my elements were not clearly visible in it. I also tried white but found this got dirty and looked less than professional. My final color was tan and this also worked well, but I now do prefer pink because it's cheaper. This concludes my storage solution for micro-armour presentation. I should point out this can be used to store ancients or Napoleonic figures and I use them for this purposes as well. My current project is 1200 scale naval and the boxes work well for this as well.
Wishing you the best of health and happiness in the future as you pursue this fine hobby.